tonight I am at Simley High School in Inver Grove Heights. I'm in Class 3, Section 4. I'm going to be watching the number 3 seed Simley Spartans versus the number 6 seed South St. Paul Packers. And once I finish this game, I will have seen the top 150 teams in the state, according to the QRF. Number 3, Simley defeated South St. Paul tonight in the quarterfinals of Section 4. It was the final score 44-31. Simley led at halftime 27-13, double the South St. Paul score. Defense really ruled this game, especially in the second half. If I had time of possession, South St. Paul would have won that easily. They just couldn't figure out a way to get a decent shot, and you can credit the pressure up the floor by Simley, and also the inside presence of Kylie Brown. She wasn't going to let anything get by her. South St. Paul did cut the deficit to 39-31 with about 2.5 minutes to go after 2 threes by Tori Poole. Simley pulled it out, milked the clock, and made free throws down the stretch to ice the game. Simley now moves on to play the winner of Hill Murray, and I believe it's Highland Park. Whoever wins that game on Tuesday at St. Paul, Washington. All right, there you have last night's game with Simley and South St. Paul. But what about the rest of the state? Here's what happened last night. In 4A, there were eight section games in 5 and 7, and with the most points last night, it was Anoka with 76 over Coon Rapids with 22. Also scoring 76 was Champlain Park in Section 5. 3 teams scored over 70 or more points last night in 4A. The fewest points was Coon Rapids with 22 in their loss to Anoka. 4 teams failed to score 40 or more. There was probably at least two running time games last night. The largest winning margin was the 54 points with Anoka over Coon Rapids. And there was one single-digit game, and that was in Section 5 with number 4 seed Osseo beating number 5 seed Cooper 55-53. Mounds View had the most points and with a loss. Now the most points together with 2 teams was 127. That was Maple Grove and Mounds View, 69-58 with the Crimson winning. And the fewest points was 90 with Cambridge Isandi beating Duluth East 59-31. Claire Lundberg led the 4A teams last night in scoring with 25 points. In 3A, there were 8 games in sections 3 and 4. Most points scored last night was 91 with De La Salle's win over Spring Lake Park. 5 teams scored over 70 last night. Fewest points was 13 with St. Paul Harding, getting that against New Prague's number 1 seeded defense in Section 4. 4 teams did not make it to the 40-point mark in 3A last night. There were 3 running time games. The largest winning margin was the 64 points with New Prague over St. Paul Harding, 77-13. There were no single-digit games. The closest game was 10 points, and that was Red Wing over Visitation, 48-38. Now, the most points by a team that didn't win was 61 by Spring Lake Park, and that pushed the most point total by 2 combined teams to 152 with De La Salle and Spring Lake Park. The fewest points, well, I was there last night. That was 75, Simley's 44-31 win over South St. Paul. Top scorer last night in 3A was Andrea Adams of St. Paul Como Park. She had 32 in a win over St. Anthony. That was a 4 versus 5 in Section 3. In AA, there were 32 games last night. There were a few upsets, unlike 4 and 3A. The biggest one was number 6 DGF over number 3 Pelican Rapids in 8AA South, 75-71 in overtime. But Pelican Rapids doesn't have Mackenzie Korf, so I don't know if that was really truly an upset. That Mackenzie Korf is their point guard. Now, the most points scored last night, there were two teams with 87 in 2A. Narig, number one in the state, number one in 2AA South. They beat Tri-City United 87-34. And New Life in Section 4 beat Community of Peace 87-14. 11 teams scored over 70 or more points last night. The fewest point totals last night was the number 10, and that was Minneapolis Henry in a loss to Providence 76-10. 17 teams did not make it to 40 in Class 2A. There were 9 running time games as far as I can tell in 2A. The largest winning margin, again, was 73 points with New Life over Community of Peace. 5 games were decided by a single possession, 8 in single digits. Now, there were some 5 versus 4 upsets in Class 2, and these are where the margins took place. Melrose, a 5 seed, beat number 4 seed Holdingford in a 6AA North game. Perham beat Barnesville in 8AA South action by 2 points. The most points when a team didn't win was 71 by Pelican Rapids, and that game went into overtime. So the most points total for 2 combined teams was a 146 with DGF over Pelican Rapids. And the fewest point totals for 2 combined teams was 78 with St. Agnes beating St. Paul Washington 60-18, and Annandale, the number 1 seed in 5AA North, over Mora 61-17. Carly Wagner led all scores in 2A last night with 39 points in the Narig win over Tri-City United. Jalen Beachy reached the milestone of 1,000 points in Staples Motley's win last night as well. In Class A, there were 43 games. There were some upsets. There were 2 6 seeds over number 3 seeds. Wheaton Herman Norcross beat Ortonville 57-46 in 6A South, and Cherry beat Northeast Range 66-62 in 7A North. 14 teams. There were a couple other 5 versus 4 winners in upsets in Class A. There were 14 teams that scored over 70 or more points last night in Class A, with the 85 points by Lester Prairie Holy Trinity over Sleepy Eye, the most at 85. The fewest points were 10 points scored by North Lakes in a loss to Southwest Christian Chaska. 26 teams, including 2 teams that won, did not get to 40 points. There were 12 running time games. The largest margin last night was 69 with Choff's win over Learning for Leadership. There were 9 games decided by single digits. The smallest winning margin was 4 points, and that included Cherry's win over Northeast Range. Also, Bertha Hewitt's win over Parker's Prairie, and Pine River Bacchus over Monaga. The most points by a second-place team was Sleepy Eye. They had 67. 2 teams, combined totals, 152, Lester Prairie and Holy Trinity over Sleepy Eye. And the fewest points were by 2 teams were 61 with Minneapolis Edison beating Transitions 41-20. Top scorer in Class A last night was Abby Hawkinson of McGregor in the win over Renshaw. Now, I told you a little bit about the Simley South St. Paul game from last night. Do you know who the Golden Girls were, who the 31 club members were, how the decisions were made, all the other fine details? If you don't know, your opponents do, and you need to subscribe to KJASR. Go to the top right corner on the main webpage of KJASR.com to subscribe, because the difference is the details.